My name is John Samia, and I'm the chair of the Shrewsbury Select Board. On behalf of my fellow board members and the town manager's office, I want to welcome you to our December 10th, 2024 Select Board meeting. Tonight's live broadcast is being brought to you by Sarah Hashey of the Shrewsbury Media Connection. Tonight's meeting also will be available via the Shrewsbury Media Connection on YouTube starting tomorrow. All of our previous meetings are also currently available on the same platform. As we customarily do, before we begin, I ask that our members introduce themselves, as well as staff.
Carlos Garcia.
Michelle Conlon. Beth Cassavant.
Teresa Flynn.
Kevin Mizikar, Town Manager.
David Snowden, Assistant Town Manager.
Justin Dobson, Assistant to Town Manager.
And again, I'm John Samia, Chair of the Select Board, and thank you for joining us this evening. First item on the agenda under preliminaries to approve bills, payrolls, and warrants.
Move approval?
Second.
I've been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Next item on the agenda is to review and act to approve the minutes of November 12th, 2024, which was a meeting, November 14th, 2024, which was a roundtable, November 18th, 2024, which was a meeting at town meeting, November 19th, 2024, which was a meeting, and December 3rd, 2024, which was a workshop. Is there a motion?
So moved.
Second.
The agenda doesn't say the right thing, though.
No, it was the 19th. We met the day after town meeting on the
Okay.
19th. So do we want to take, just a quick question, separate? So why don't we take the minutes separate? On December 3rd, do we want to take the workshop separate?
I think, yes, we can take, so move to approve the minutes of November 12th, 2024, November 14th, 2024, November 18th, 2024, and November 26th, 2024.
It's really
I'm sorry,
19th.
November 19th, 2024.
Is there a second?
Second.
Having moved and seconded, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously, and then the December 3rd workshop minutes.
Yes, move to approve.
Second.
Having moved and seconded, all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Any-
And I'm abstaining since I was not present.
Okay, so for the record, 12th, 14th, 18th, and 19th of November approved 5-0, December 3rd approved 4-0 with one abstention. Thank you. Next item on the agenda, announcements, reports. Colleagues, any announcements? Carlos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Sure.
I have one. I wanted to share with the community that the Massachusetts Executive Office of Veterans Services and Veterans Inc. will be hosting a 1-hour presentation and Q&A to share information on the HERO Act this Thursday at Veterans Inc. on South Street. That'll be from 2 to 3 p.m. And just a quick overview, the HERO Act is an act honoring, empowering, and recognizing our service members and veterans. So certainly encourage folks to attend that event if they can to learn more about how the HERO Act is honoring our veterans. If they are unable to attend, there is a virtual session on December 19th from 5 to 6 p.m. And that information can be found on the town website.
Thank you. Michelle?
I have an announcement as well.
Sure.
With winter weather upon us, the Shrewsbury Fire Department, along with the Shrewsbury Highway Department and the Council on Aging, have teamed up to provide and deliver 5-gallon buckets of sand to residents over 60 and homebound. In order to request one of these, please call Fire Headquarters at 508-841-8522 or the Council on Aging at 508-841-8640.
Thank you. Any other announcements? I have two quick ones. The holiday tree pickup for all pay-as-you-throw households will occur on your regular scheduled pickup day during the week of Monday, January 13th, 2025 through Friday, January 17th, 2025. Please ensure that you place only one real tree per household that is free of snow, ice, and decorations. The trees must be placed at the curb by 7 a.m. And the second announcement that I have is the Commission on Disabilities has created the Access Award Program, which recognizes businesses within the community for employing and providing exceptional services to people with disabilities. Recently, the Commission has awarded the Access Award to Stop and Shop, Maple and Maine, and Peaceful Creations Wellness Center. If you are interested in nominating a local business for this award, please visit the Commission's webpage on shrewsburyma.gov for more information. That's all that I have. Next item on the agenda is Town Manager's Report. Mr. Mizikar.
Good evening, board members. I have two updates for you this evening. The first, an update on solid waste. Pleased to report, as we continue to work with Casella, that they have increased the number of trucks in town every day from 4 to 5. And they have also changed the route sequence and how they stage the pickup between solid waste and recycling to make sure they're taking a more neighborhood-based approach, which will give residents a better understanding and shorter duration between the time their trash and recycling is collected. So these two changes are seeming to make a significant impact. For instance, today all routes were finished by 3:26 p.m. So we're happy that they're making these changes. We'll continue to work with Casella. We know some of the longest delays have occurred when they go to tip the waste at the waste incinerator, and some trucks have sat there for over 3 hours. So we continue to work with Win Waste in making sure that their processes become more efficient so it doesn't impact our collections at the curbside. Second, just want to formally make the board aware that the Mass Leads Act, or the Economic Development Bond Bill that was passed in November, codified and put into law 12 additional grant programs that the town will not be eligible for if we're not in compliance, or I guess on December 31st with the MBTA Communities Act. There's a variety of grant programs in there. Some of them I know that we've utilized in the past that were not part of the original 4 or the 13 other that were provided through the guidelines. We are in the process of analyzing these grant programs to provide the 5-year look back and update the board on any impacts that we may foresee through these additional grant programs not being eligible. I will just note that they include a much broader scope of grant programs, including things like public library grants, historic preservation grants, priority development grants, and site readiness grants, many of those which I know we've received grants through for the last 5 years. So we'll provide an official analysis for you at your upcoming meeting.
Okay, thank you. Any
Thank you.
questions? Next item on the agenda is public comment pursuant to Select Board Policy 31. This offers citizens the opportunity to provide public comments during our meetings on matters within our authority. No one has expressed a desire to speak this evening. However, those wishing to speak at a regular scheduled board meeting in the future can do so by notifying the chair through our office by the end of business on the day prior to our meeting, by written correspondence or email at selectboard@shrewsburyma.gov. And also just a reminder that the Select Board holds office hours on the first Tuesday meeting of every month. They were held this evening, and would welcome another opportunity to speak with you as well. And please, those are just drop by at your convenience. Next item on the agenda is under financial business to review the fiscal year 2026 revenue manual. By Alex Martinez. Good evening.
Good evening.
Yeah. I'm going to go as well.
Oh, okay. Mr. Snowden.
No problem. Yep, actually, it'll be both of us.
Okay.
Appreciate it.
And Ms. Martinez. Welcome both.
All right. All right. Let's wait until the PowerPoint comes up, and then we'll go from there.
One moment.
All right. All right, thank you, Jess. Thank you. Yeah, we can proceed to the first slide when you're ready. All right. All right, good evening, Board. The town of Shrewsbury's fiscal capacity is derived from its ability to levy taxes on property and charge for certain fees for services. The revenue manual that Alex and I will review this evening has been developed to provide a comprehensive reference of the town's various revenue sources and inform the budgeting process for fiscal year 2026. The complete FY 2026 revenue manual will be published online following this meeting, and copies of this document may also be provided upon request. Moving now, on this screen, you can see a summary of the revenues for fiscal year 2026. Total revenues for FY26 are projected at $188,589,196, which is a decrease of $1,190,144, or 0.63% less than the FY25 special town meeting budget. Next slide, please. All right, so we'll work our way through the different sources right now while we have this pie chart on the board. The property tax levy, in accordance with the provisions of Proposition 2.5, will increase to $115,125,698, which is $3,184,128, or 2.84% greater than FY26. This increase includes the 2.5 increase over FY25, in addition to new growth as well. Property tax revenues dedicated to debt service, which has been excluded from the provisions of Prop 2.5, will provide $8,681,249, which is $637,075 less than FY25. Moving down to state aid, these are made up of three main components: cherry sheet aid, the annual recurring aid for education, general government, and other categories, tax exemption aid, and highway construction, preservation improvement aid through the Chapter 90 formula. State aid is projected at $27,227,643, which is approximately 1% increase over FY25. This figure will be updated with the issuance of fiscal projection 1 if the governor has released the state budget figures prior to that time. All right. The town's utility operations, solid waste, water, and sewer, and stormwater are projected to raise $21,816,944 in revenue during FY26. This is a decrease of $2,698,280, or roughly 5.9% in comparison to FY25. As often occurs, additional funds may be identified from available funds in the Treasury to fund other ongoing capital and maintenance projects for these operations as the budget process matures. Local receipt revenues are forecasted to yield $16.5 million, which is an increase of approximately $920,000, or 6.45% over FY25 budgeted revenue. This local category is the most exposed to general economic conditions, and projections are often regularly updated throughout the budget process. Free cash funds are appropriated in accordance with the town's reserve fund policy, and the current projected required appropriation from free cash is estimated at $2.7 million for FY26. Other remaining available revenue funds include revenues related to the sale of cemetery lots, cemetery trusts, debt service revenue from Selco, internal account transfers, bond interest reserve, cable public access fund, anticipated community preservation revenues and appropriations. At this point in time, this category is projected at $5.2 million, and as we move throughout the budget process, this will be updated. Wanted to add a brief little comment on the override stabilization fund, as it's the centerpiece of the commitment of the select board and school committee in prolonging the duration of the May 4th, 2021 override. These funds have been reserved for future appropriation by town meeting to fund the operations of municipal and educational departments, as well as shared operating support expenses in various departments. Since FY22, the town has consistently deposited funds into the override stabilization at least once annually, and the current balance as of November 21st, 2024 is $9,470,465, and there is no planned use of the stabilization fund in FY26. Next slide, please. All right. We're going to do a little bit more of a deep dive into the tax levy at this point. Property tax is the primary source of revenue for virtually every Massachusetts municipality. In Shrewsbury, property taxes represent approximately 60% of the annual revenues. Property taxes are levied on real property, land and buildings, and personal property, equipment. State law mandates that communities update their property values at least every 5 years and obtain state certification that such values represent full and fair cash value. A reevaluation was conducted in FY '21. In the interim years, the town reviews and adjusts values to ensure they represent the current market conditions. Forecast assumptions for FY '26. Property values and new growth for FY '26 are currently preliminary estimates used to project the levy limit. The FY '25 levy limit was $102,675,615, and the 2.5 prop over the 2.5 proposition over that allows for $2,566,890. When we're estimating our new growth, we typically look at the 3-year, 5-year, and 10-year averages of the tax levy growth, and we're projecting new growth at 1.25 million. As we mentioned earlier, there is 8,633,193 added to the tax levy to cover the cost of debt service for projects approved by the voters through debt exclusions. The added debt exclusion amount is net of other available resources dedicated to debt service, which is estimated at $48,056. I wanted to add one final note. These figures currently do not reflect a potential debt exclusion for the DPW Town Hall Facilities Project. If this project is decided to be added to a ballot question in May 2025, there could be a debt exclusion, and it's estimated that the debt exclusion amount for that would be $696,444 in additional excluded debt. All right, next slide.
Thank you. So the second largest revenue category behind tax levy is state aid. State aid is the restricted and unrestricted aid that municipalities receive through the state budget. The two largest categories are general government aid and school aid. The governor typically releases the first iteration of the state budget in January of each year. Prior to the release of that budget, we've applied a conservative 1% increase to most categories where applicable. State aid is broken out into the following categories. General government aid is direct local aid and assistance that consists of unrestricted general government aid, veterans benefits, of which the town receives a 75% reimbursement, and pilot payments for state-owned land not subject to local property taxes. In this line, we've applied a 1% increase. The next category is Chapter 90, and these are funds allocated for roadway capital improvements, such as highway construction, preservation, and improvement projects. Total program dollars are divided among communities based on lane miles, population, and employment. In FY '25, a new appropriation was incorporated into Chapter 90, known as the Fair Share Amendment. These funds must be spent on public education and transportation, and the apportionment is automatically incorporated into our existing Chapter 90 contract with Mass DOT. Our estimated increase is based on the state's anticipated funding for FY '26, and this will be reviewed as the budget develops. The next category is school aid, and this is direct aid for schools based on the number of pupils enrolled. Each district is guaranteed to receive at least $30 per pupil in Chapter 70 aid. School aid also includes charter school tuition reimbursements for costs associated with pupils who attend charter schools. For FY '26, we've proposed that this line be level funded with FY '25 until we get further guidance from the state. The next category is tax exemptions, and there are several categories of property tax exemptions that we receive a partial reimbursement for. This includes tax exemptions for veterans, blind persons, surviving spouses, and elderly who meet the exemption requirements. We've held this line level funded with FY '25. The last state aid category, cherry sheet offsets, are grant funds for school choice tuition and the library. These are reserved for direct expenditures by those departments and cannot be used for generally available revenue. Cherry sheet offsets have been held level with FY '25. In total, state aid revenue is forecasted at $27,227,643, which is a conservative 1% increase. These figures will be reviewed further and revised as the state budget develops.
Excellent. All right, now we'll take a look at the utility revenues. In particular, we have water, sewer, stormwater, and solid waste enterprises, and their related revenue categories. So looking at some of the methodology, water rates are reviewed regularly by the water commissioners, the select board, to ensure that the fees generated accurately support the costs to supply clean drinking water to the community. Likewise, the sewer and stormwater rates are reviewed regularly by the sewer commissioners to ensure that the fees generate accurately support the costs of the respective enterprises. And lastly, the pricing of both the pay-as-you-throw bags and bulky waste stickers may be adjusted to ensure the receipts received by the solid waste enterprise offset approximately 50% of the enterprise costs. Starting at the top here and working our way down, the FY26 solid waste enterprise revenue forecast assumes similar revenue projections as the preceding years since the pay-as-you-throw bag fee increase went into effect July 1st, 2021. The revenues are projected to remain level with FY25. Moving now to sewer. Recently, necessary infrastructure projects have drawn heavily on the sewer surplus account, as was intended in their rate analysis. The FY26 sewer revenue projections were tabulated from figures provided in the memo to the sewer commissioners dated April 5th, 2024, which can be found online, and in accordance with their sewer rate analysis that was approved by the sewer commissioners March 15th, 2021, also available online. Stormwater enterprise. The MS4 2016 permit is an unfunded federal mandate that requires operators of MS4s to significantly bolster and provide additional services to their stormwater management program. In February 2019, the Board of Sewer Commissioners approved the Stormwater Management Rules and Regulations. These rules and regulations for the stormwater utility rates are for properties within the town of Shrewsbury and stormwater management permit on any land disturbing actively equal to or more than 5,000 square feet. The town estimated the average cost to comply with the MS4 2016 permit to be $1.75 million per year for the first 5 years. An element of this MS4 permit provisions, the town must develop and implement a lake phosphorus control plan, or an LPCP. This implementation includes structural and non-structural best management practices executed through programs, projects, and policies. The LPCP must be fully implemented by June 30th, 2033, and the total cost with this implementation is estimated to range from 20 to 34 million. The FY26 water rate revenues were tabulated from figures provided to the memo of the Water and Sewer Commissioners for fiscal year 2025 dated April 5th, 2024, and in accordance with their water fee analysis dated April 25, 2023. This study was conducted at the outset of setting the initial FY24 water rate schedule and includes the following projected water revenues from the Water Conservation Fund, Water Article Closeout, Water System Improvement / retained earnings, and other water revenues. One other final note, this ties earlier to the comment in the tax levy. These figures do not reflect the utility self-supporting portions of the DPW Town Hall Facilities Project, as it has not been fully approved yet. However, if this project was voted at a special town meeting, added to a ballot question, and passed across all 4 enterprises, the amount of debt and interest needed to be raised for FY26 would be $1.38 million. Next slide, please. All right. So we'll take a look now at the Cable Public Access Fund. On May 16th, 2018, the Public Education Governmental Access Programming and Services Agreement was signed between the Town of Shrewsbury and the nonprofit Shrewsbury Media Connection for the purpose of the provision of PEG access programming and PEG access services, facilities, training, and equipment. The revenue for the fund is comprised of the franchise fees collected for the use of the town's cable television, public education, and governmental access enterprise. As per the May 2024 agreement, the town shall provide 4.5% of the gross annual revenue from the cable operations to provide for PEG programming. These funds for this payment are covered through the revenue collected through the contract terms of the town's cable television franchise license agreement granted to Selco. The projection for FY26 is $388,836, And this figure is currently an estimate that will be updated by February 2025 as Selco closes out their books. Next slide, please.
Local receipts are locally generated revenues other than real and personal property. This revenue category is usually the most elastic and dependent on economic conditions. And we use a variety of historical trend analysis as well as looking at prior year actuals to determine these projections. So on that note, over the past 5 years, the average difference between local receipts budgeted and actual has been 23.33%, with an average value of $2,784,403. On average, over the past 5 years, budgeted local receipts have increased approximately 3.06% annually. Taking a conservative approach has put the town in a favorable position to generate free cash and surplus revenue. In FY26, we feel confident in the historic data and trends and are proposing a 5.91% increase over FY25 budgeted revenues. This increase reflects historical trends and generally strong economic conditions without compromising our conservative approach to forecasting. Looking at these categories individually from the top down, the largest is motor vehicle excise. This is a locally imposed tax assessed to owners of motor vehicles registered to an address within town. The excise rate is set by a state statute at $35 per 1,000 of vehicle value. Motor vehicle excise has shown a healthy increase over the past couple of years, rebounding well from market conditions during the pandemic. For FY26, we're proposing a budget of $7,560,000, which is an increase of 3.85% over the FY25 budget. The other excise tax category is comprised of hotel, meals, and cannabis excise tax. Shrewsbury has historically seen positive growth rates in hotel excise. However, given the current migrant housing situation facing the state, it is not anticipated that the town will receive significant hotel excise revenue in FY26, especially compared to previous years. The majority of revenue from this category is anticipated to come from the 33 registered short-term rentals in town, since the properties known as the Days Inn and the Worcester City Motel are no longer operating as public lodging facilities. The FY26 budgeted revenue amount for hotel excise is $100,000. Next would be meals tax, and meals tax is anticipated to remain steady based on historical averages, and we're proposing a FY26 budget of $775,000, or an increase of approximately 8%. This is another revenue category that has rebounded strongly from the impacts of the pandemic. The last category in other excise is cannabis excise. This revenue category was first introduced in FY22 and is a local sales tax on the retail sales of marijuana or marijuana products at a rate of 3%. Revenue is now significant enough from these sources to be broken out into a separate category. However, given the limited trend analysis data for historical actuals, we're level funding cannabis excise for FY26 at a rate of $215,000. The next category in local receipts is landfill revenue, and this is the annual fee collected for materials deposited into the landfill by Wheelabrator, and also for metals recovery activities. In May 2024, the Monofill began receiving additional residue quantities from the Saugus waste to energy plant, and it is expected that 50% of Saugus's ash will be delivered to Shrewsbury in FY25. This will go up to 100% beginning in FY28. So it is anticipated that this will provide some excess revenue to the town, and the FY26 budget is $1.9 million, which is an increase of 8.5%. The next category is departmental fees, and this revenue category consists of fees collected by various town departments, including the town clerk's office, the police department, the fire department, the cemetery department, and we are proposing a very minor increase over FY25. This is a category that has remained pretty level over the past few years. The next category is license and permits, and these consist primarily of fees charged for activities regulated through the Town of Shrewsbury bylaws. This includes alcoholic beverage and restaurant licenses, as well as building, gas, electrical, and plumbing permits. Building permits make up most of the revenue in this category. And we're proposing a FY26 budget of 1.5 million, which is an increase of 11% over FY25. The next revenue category, interest income and penalties, is made up of investment income and penalties associated with delinquent tax payments. Historically, this category has varied widely due to dramatic fluctuations in interest rates and the amount of funds on hand for investment. The town monitors this category very closely, working with our investment firm Bartholomew to monitor our town's investments. This category has performed very well historically. However, we're taking a conservative approach for FY26, and this is primarily due to the anticipation that the majority of the town's balance of ARPA funds will be fully expended in FY26. The FY26 budget estimate is $2,850,000, which is an increase of 1.7%. Rental income is a category that we track, however, it is minimal and we do not factor it into revenue forecasts. The last category within local receipts is remaining revenue. This includes various fees and reimbursements, including a pilot payment from the Shrewsbury Housing Authority, fees for street betterments, miscellaneous recurring supplemental real estate tax, which is supplemental tax assessed on new construction, reimbursements for the cost of transportation for non-resident pupils, and the annual license fee paid to the town by Selco for the use of the solar array. In regards to the cannabis community impact fee that historically flowed through this category, new host community agreements have been executed with both establishments in accordance with Mass General Law, and we will no longer include the additional 3% impact fee. We are estimating $500,000 within the remaining revenue sources. In total, local receipts are estimated at $60,500,000, which is 5.9% over FY25.
This computer did. Okay.
You can't see it, but the next slide just depicts local receipts budgeted compared to actuals from FY20 to FY24. And as stated, and as you can see, local receipts have historically done very well and outpaced budgeted figures consistently.
All right, thank you, Alex. We'll just give it a second so we can get the PowerPoint back up. It's got to reset. All right. Well, we'll go through the images of the slides later. Then, right now, we'll talk about free cash. Free cash, which is certified as of July 1st each year by the Commonwealth's Department of Revenue, represents the portion of the general fund's surplus revenue that is unrestricted and available for appropriation. These funds, once certified, may be used to support supplemental appropriations during the year, to support the ensuing fiscal year's budget, to reduce the tax levy, or to serve as emergency reserves. Free cash is generated when the actual operating results compare favorably with the budget, such as when actual revenues exceed the original estimates and/or when actual expenditures are less than the amounts that were appropriated. Free cash is also affected by increases or decreases in unallocated property taxes, deficits in the non-general fund funds, and any other legally incurred operating deficits such as snow removal overdrafts. The DOR recommends that towns maintain a free cash balance equal to no less than 5% of their fiscal year operating budget. The Select Board adopted a fiscal policy endeavoring to generate certified free cash equivalent in the amount of 3 to 5% of the annual general fund budget, while amounts in excess of 2.5% of the proposed operating budget will be available for capital or other one-time expenses. It should be noted that over the past decade, the average free cash balance as a percentage of the prior year operating budget has been 5.91%. The town's free cash balance as of June 30th, 2024 was $12.5 million. And in accordance with the town's policy, it is recommended that $2.7 million of the existing balance be appropriated towards the FY26 and be allocated as follows: $35,000 for the Lake Quinsigamon Commission, $300,000 to fund the general stabilization, $350,000 to fund counseling and educational services, $20,000 to fund the insurance trust account, $8,000 to fund medical expenses, and then lastly, $2 million to fund capital improvements. This is exclusive of the $500,000 that's also used from free cash to reduce the levy. All right. Thank you, Justin. We can go to the next slide. All right. So I wanted to take a little bit of time to look at the stabilization funds. And first, we'll give some governing guidelines. Massachusetts General Law, Chapter 40, Section 5B allows for the establishment of stabilization funds for one or more different purposes. The creation of a fund requires 2/3 vote of the legislative body and must clearly define the purpose of the fund. Any change to the purpose of the fund, along with any additions to or appropriations from the fund, require 2/3 vote of the legislative body. And lastly, any interest shall be added to and become part of the fund. For the town of Shrewsbury, the stabilization funds reported in the general fund as unassigned fund balance consist of the general stabilization fund and the override stabilization fund. The general stabilization fund is the town's main reserve fund designed to provide financial stability for all aspects of town operations while also improving the town's creditworthiness and flexibility. The override stabilization fund, this was created to manage revenues received from any approved Proposition 2.5 override question. The creation of this special fund provides a financial mechanism to manage the approach of the Select Board and School Committee in prolonging the durations of the funds raised from the approved ballot question May 4th, 2021, as previously mentioned. This override stabilization fund helps the town overcome the challenges of long-term financial stability associated with Proposition 2.5. So if we look on this slide right now, the first two tables will give a snapshot of the contributions and withdrawals from FY22 and those projected through FY26. A couple highlights we want to make sure we're also aware of is it should be noted that the town will be at policy level for the general stabilization in FY26, and our contribution will be less this year than it has in previous years, and this is due to the strong financial work from the town manager and the select board's policy directions. Additionally, fiscal year 2025, the current fiscal year is the 5th year that incorporated the Proposition 2.5 override from 2021. At this time of the publication, the town's override stabilization balance is in accordance with the town's policy, and it's recommended that 0 of the existing balance be appropriated towards the FY26 budget. Next slide, please. All right. This reduced levy category. Revenues comprised in this category include free cash and Selco revenue to further reduce the tax rate. Roughly 67% of the revenue within this category is generated through voluntary pilot contributions from Selco. These contributions are dependent on a strong financial position of Selco, and this is a testament to the value of the municipal utilities and Selco's shared commitment to the prosperity of this community. Revenues for FY26 will be held level with FY25, but are dependent on the collaboration with Selco. Pilot payments are also subject to the ability for Selco to make these payments, as well as negotiations between the town and Selco. The projection for FY26 reduced levy category is $1.536 million and broken out as seen on the slide above. Next slide, please.
Revenues in the other available funds category include a variety of revenue sources, including funds transferred from the sale of cemetery lots account, debt service payments from Selco, departmental account transfers, funding for the Cable Public Access Fund, which Mr. Snowden previously reviewed, and Community Preservation Act project funding for approved projects. There are a couple of categories within this group that have historically not been included in this phase of the budget development. However, for accurate forecasting, we feel it's important to include them in the FY26 revenue manual. These categories are account transfers and the Community Preservation Act funding. Account transfers were budgeted using an average of the prior 10-year actuals, and some recent examples of what an account transfer might look like are the transfer of the unused Beale Elementary School construction funds to the cemetery project, and the Oak Middle School window project, as well as just general transfers within departments that are approved at town meeting. The Community Preservation Act estimate used for FY26 is $1 million, and this is based on the anticipated revenues that will be received in FY26 through the local CPA tax surcharge and the state matching funds. We will review these items closely and more in detail as we get to the annual town meeting, and further updates to these revenue categories will be provided throughout the development of the budget.
All right. All right, this concludes our presentation of the FY26 revenue manual. The revenue projections and figures presented tonight and throughout this document are accurate as the date of this publication. As previously indicated, the intent and purpose of the revenue manual is to encourage and develop clear and transparent budgetary processes by providing an in-depth detail of the town's revenues. This manual is a living document that will serve as a guiding budgetary baseline for the departments throughout the preparation of the FY26 budget and will evolve several times throughout the process. We're more than happy to answer any questions that anybody has, and we can go back to any other slides if that is necessary.
Thank you for that presentation. Members, any questions or comments? No,
I have a question.
go ahead.
Regarding the lake phosphorus control plan, given that we share such a large, we share the lake essentially with Worcester, how is the city of Worcester sharing the costs of that with the town of Shrewsbury?
And this is regard to the stormwater.
Yes.
Yeah. I can get a more exact answer from Vincent Ty and Andy Truman in engineering, but I do know it's not solely based on Lake Quinsigamon. There are some bodies of water that have a higher phosphorus content, if I'm saying this correctly, and I do think that Jordan Pond may be one of them. So it's not solely Lake Quinsig. Some of the areas that are focused on within the town's phosphorus reduction plan I do not consider Lake Quinsig.
Okay.
But I can provide a better update for the board on what bodies of water are under the program.
Okay, I'd appreciate that, thank you.
Any other questions?
If you don't mind,
Go ahead, Chris.
with regard to local receipts, which we are or at least budgeting for this initial pass to go up about just under 6%. I think it was 5.91%. 5.9. I don't disagree that being conservative has been advantageous. Do you feel that we're being a little less conservative this year, or consistently conservative, or would just love your perspective around how you might see this progresses as the budget process progresses?
I think we're maturing our conservativeness. Maybe you could say it that way. If we are too conservative, we can essentially hinder the production of any budget or outlook. So it's always a balance of we want to make sure that we're generating appropriate free cash, but we also don't want to draw back on necessary investments. I think looking at the historic trends, we've become more comfortable in projecting some of the receipts a little bit higher in certain areas because we have seen significant growth there. So we are higher, but I think it's our modeling and research shows that these are effective projections that we're using. So we are slightly less conservative, yes.
So, can I just add? So, I mean, I think on average, our growth, it was 6% or so per year in local receipts bottom
Three.
line. 3%.
Like for budgeted,
Yeah.
3%.
If we look at FY24 actual to FY26 budgeted, we're still over $1.5 million greater than what we actually received in FY24. So even if you apply that 3% year-over-year adjustment, we're going to be, by the time we get to FY26, we'll likely still have revenues exceed the budgeted estimate by over $2 million. So given the expenditure side restrictions through the override agreement that the board has in place, the only place that we could really dedicate those funds to would be into like the general stabilization fund. Do you know what I mean? Because, so that expenditure side restriction is, we're fully funding all the budget areas up to that cap. So we don't necessarily have a need for that additional revenue in this initial projection, so.
So that leads to a follow-up question,
Sure.
if I may. I think that might be a good segue, Kevin, to just maybe touch upon stabilization and the override stabilization and the fact that when, local receipts are higher than projected, sort of where we allocate that. But to someone who may be tuning in and looking at, okay, why is the town sitting on
Sure.
this much? Like, to just highlight that we will start to draw down on that and the purpose of it. I think
Right.
It's important, given the levels that it's at,
Yeah.
to reflect on that.
So, when we're looking at recurring revenues year over year, we're just shy of 3% that we're projecting in this initial budget year over year. And that's a really good estimate. We get 2.5% from Proposition 2.5, and then the rest we rely on additional economic growth and activity. And this economic growth and activity isn't going to last forever. So, and our expenditure projections are somewhere a little bit greater than 4% on an annual basis. So the override stabilization fund will be used to make up that gap from the recurring tax base, to extend the amount of time that we actually have to increase taxes from residents. And once we get into, out years, and now instead of looking out 3 or 4 years, it's becoming really clear in the next 2 or 3 years, we'll start to significantly draw down upon that, $3 or $4 million a year. I still remember whenever we were setting the override policies, we looked at expenditures and revenues, and they kind of look like an EKG. They were up and down, and what we've had since the override is a really, level, consistent, stabilized revenue and expenditure pattern, and it's doing its job, right? We're in a really good spot. It is a big number, generally speaking, but it's not big in comparison to our overall nearly $200 million spend that we have. So when we start to dig into it, we're gonna dig into it, and it'll be gone within the matter of 2 or 3 years. Yeah.
And really serving its purpose of not creating that cliff.
Not
And
creating a
giving the
cliff.
community
Yeah.
enough time to recognize that we build it up in order to draw it down, to create the stabilization,
Yeah.
which it's.
And every time we meet with Standard & Poor's, they applaud us for this effort, right? And it's really been crucial in how they look at the stability of the community financially. And it's an added reason that we continue to maintain our AAA bond rating.
I mean, I think just along that line, we're doing everything we can to make sure that we push the next need for an override ask out as far as possible, right? And so even though there might be, $9 million in the override stabilization account, that doesn't mean that we're not constantly looking at what we're doing and whether or not we need to add positions or increase spending in different departments, right? We go through every year, you go through every year department budgets and reduce, right? Things that, we don't have everything that we want, right? We have what we need to do the work that the community expects. But we're doing so in a responsible manner, understanding that the longer we can prolong the override ask, the better. Always never taking for granted that the taxpayers, will always want to support the next override. But I think what we are kind of experiencing right now is this, that we're not looking at a budget that we're already looking at a deficit, right? We're coming into the budget cycle, understanding what our revenues are and knowing that we're able to maintain the agreement that we put together with the school committee to have that sort of stable funding, to be able to fund our departments and make sure that we can deliver municipal services and educational services in a way that the communities come to expect. But that comes with, a lot of planning, right? Both with Mr. Snowden and Ms. Martinez, and then with our board setting policy to make sure that we can maintain the AAA bond rating and be looking forward, planning ahead, so that we can be really upfront with the community about where we see the revenues landing and when we see that there's going to be a need to decide, right? Do we want to continue this type of a model? Do we want to continue to invest in the community, right? So I don't think any of us are being shied about, yeah, there'll be another override ask someday, right? But we are being really mindful about pushing it out as far as we can.
Just add on to that too, onto both Ms. Flynn and Ms. Cassavant's comments. You know, the balance of the override stabilization fund is because of that policy that the board has set. And what it really is we're not spending all the dollars that we have on an annual basis. And that's the fallacy that so many cities and towns fall into. They look at, well, how much revenue do we possibly have? And then they find a way to spend it. And because the board set expenditure side caps rather than revenue side caps, we set any excess revenues aside that exceed that cap. So we're living within our means that we've determined how much we're going to increase the budget, you know, before we even start the process. And then we take any additional dollars and put them into this fund for future appropriations. So it's quite different than what most cities and towns would have done, which would have been find a way to spend the $9.6 million one way or another over the last, 5 budget cycles.
Any other questions? Related to that, plus other cities and towns spend a lot of it on recurring expenses, whether it's grant revenues, one-time revenues, whatever it is, and that's been the challenge that cities and towns have had. Comment, and then I'll have a couple questions. The important part about this too, this revenue manual fits nicely into the fiscal projection model, right? I mean, if you look at all of this is linked to one another as this is presented for 26 and beyond, it's consistent with the commitment we made to the community, but as well as this is constant monitoring of our numbers and modeling it out and fine tuning. And this is not just what's presented this evening. This is an ongoing, it's annual, it's regular, it's testing assumptions. So that's important to recognize. Just a couple quick questions, and it may be way too early, but any trends that we see with Schedule A receipts right now? I know we won't have the big tranche of motor vehicle excise until early next year, but do we get any visibility into actual numbers so far?
Yeah, we'll have a much more solid update, second quarter update for the board in their first meeting in January. Right now, we've got confirmed numbers for the first quarter, but if we can hold off till January, we can provide you very good information at that point in time.
Okay, I know it's early. Nothing right now that stands out in terms of a risk.
No, nothing that's alarming or
Yeah.
risk.
And just a two-part question on interest income. Any, risk with expected decreases in interest rates and any opportunity with respect to the prudent investor rule if we apply that? So is it offset pretty much? That's the conservative aspects of this? Or right now this is, hey, we're going to fine-tune going forward, but this is our carry-forward assumptions this year? Or what's the thoughts on those two?
So we'll be checking back in with our financial advisor in early January, and they'll run an updated analysis before we set the budget. We're not seeing any changes or concerns. The last time we met with them, I think it was in October, we talked about what interest rates may be doing, and even if the Fed was to adjust the rate 3 or 4 times in calendar year 2025, that the maturity and the duration of our investments would allow for FY26 to carry forward, and 27 we may have to look differently.
Okay.
Just a note on prudent investor, when we made that change, it was on our trust fund, so those interests do not fall into
Okay.
local receipt
That's right. Okay.
categories.
All right. And then one last question. Fair share amendment, Chapter 90 dollars. When do we get those in terms of actual funding?
I think Mrs. Martinez could probably best answer that.
I believe we usually get that within the first quarter of the fiscal year.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I have one
Michelle,
more
go
question. Regarding the landfill revenue, so understanding that there is we're receiving ash from the Saugus waste to energy plant, and that quantity that we're receiving is going to increase. Is it going? And it says to 100% by FY28. Is it increasing incrementally until 2028 or FY28, or is it going like from 50% now, and then in 2028, it's going to go from 50% to 100%.
I'll have to check with them. I believe it's the latter, though.
Yeah, I think the portion from Saugus is going to be increasing, yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, but
Exactly
it will be at 50% of the ash that they're producing, and then it will bump up.
Correct.
To 100% of the ash in 2028.
Okay, and I have some
Go ahead.
follow-up. Okay, so, understanding we are, it's providing excess revenue to the town right now, and so we're budgeting for that excess revenue. You know, the landfill has a finite capacity. And so as we approach sort of the capacity of the landfill, is the increased revenue that we're receiving because of the ash from Saugus sort of making up for us reaching that capacity sooner than what it had originally been? And once the landfill is at capacity, I'm assuming that our waste that goes to Wheelabrator and is then trucked to Shrewsbury to the landfill will have to go somewhere else, and will that cost increase for Shrewsbury? And it's like the revenue that we're receiving sort of balancing that out for that anticipated, what I would expect would be an increased cost.
We haven't looked at that like that right now. We know that the landfill has an expected remaining capacity through 2031. So that has been adjusted by a year or two over the last few years, and that every year we get better at it because we know what actually is put in there and the cells that they create and the size like that versus the estimates. So, just a couple of years ago, it was only 2028. So we have those 3 additional years. Saugus isn't negatively impacting it, so we're still getting the additional revenues with the additional ash. The metals recovery facilities doing better and better every year. So it's preserving the life of the landfill. I do not understand yet if once Shrewsbury closes, if we would experience an additional cost. Because we will have to negotiate a new tipping agreement with the Wheelabrator incinerator at that time. So that will be determined once we begin those negotiations in a couple of years.
Okay.
So, but I understand what you're saying. Like if it's got to be run down to somewhere in Connecticut, the other closest, it's a longer distance.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, thank you.
Any other questions? Okay. Great. Thank you.
Thank you.
Well done. Thanks a lot for the very detailed presentation. Kick off the season, which has really been going on for a while, but. Next item on the agenda is under new business to review and act to sign a development agreement and letter of support for the local initiative program application by Criterion Development Partners, 409 South Street. At this time, I'd like to invite Eric Van Arum from Criterion. This agenda item is related to a development agreement and local initiative program letter of support for Criterion Development Partners related to the proposed friendly 40B project at 409 South Street. Jack Englert, Executive Vice President and Principal of Criterion Development, had appeared before our board on September 10th, 2024 to present and discuss the proposed project. Now, Mr. Van Arum is here to answer any questions that we have, and Mr. Mizikar, I'll turn it over to you to update us on developments since September 10th.
Sure. So, thank you, Mr. Samia. As you noted, on September 10th, the board voted to request that I begin negotiations towards a local initiative program application or friendly 40B process and a company development agreement with Criterion for their proposed development of 409 South Street. During the past 2 months or 3 months, I guess exactly, we have engaged in those conversations and have appreciated the partnership and open dialogue internally with town staff about identifying needs and impacts associated with this development, given its situation along the Route 20 corridor, and with Criterion's openness and clear dialogue back and forth to identify how they can help mitigate not only our concerns, but actual physical improvements and other matters within the public domain. So I am here tonight, and I know Mr. Van Aram will present some details associated with the outcomes of our conversations, but I am in a position where I can recommend that the board adopt the development agreement and move forward with a letter of recommendation for the local initiative program. And I look forward to this conversation about what that development agreement entails.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the board. We appreciate your invitation tonight. Jack, unfortunately, wasn't able to make it due to family circumstance. He is available by phone if we need to call him in to answer some questions. And we appreciate your support with this project that we're looking to develop 409 South Street, the construction of 196 rental units. We've had some ongoing dialogue, and as part of the approval process, this agreement captures the town's support and recognizes mutual interests that we have in developing this parcel. So we've had a series of meetings, and I can go through for you real quick. I'm not sure if you're able to see what I'm sharing. I think most of this information you've seen before, but as we look at the development of the residences at Friars Farm, it's a good name for the project. You're familiar with the location of the proposed site. This is consistent with what we looked at previously. It's a series of 8 structures consisting of 6 two-level buildings housing 16 units each with parking on the ends, as we discussed previously. And then there's the two larger buildings, one with 52 units and the other one with 48 units. And just to orient yourselves here's South Street, Chestnut Street, and then Route 20 at the bottom of the page. As part of the agreement, we've agreed to, I think there's a list of items in exhibit number D, improvements that we are going to complete as part of this agreement. And we can go line item by line item. I'm not sure if everyone's had a chance to look at these items. The first one is a series of infrastructure improvements that we will undertake as part of the project. The first one is extending sidewalk from Route 20 all the way up along South Street to the project to allow connectivity to the UMass site. The exact alignment hasn't been determined yet because of the grades and some of the challenges that we have with those grades, but we are committed to installing a sidewalk that provides that connectivity. As part of the roadway enhancements on Chestnut Street, I don't know if members of the board have been out to the site, but there are some line of sight issues that we've agreed to do a mill and overlay and grading exercise to kind of take that out of the equation and provide a safer access, improving sight lines to South Street. In addition to that, at the intersection of South Street and Chestnut Street, I'm not sure if you're able to see my cursor here.
Yes.
Try to point these out. We're addressing the vertical curve, similar sightline issues at the intersection. Trying to clean up this intersection between Chestnut and South Street, make it more of a T alignment. In addition to that, the electric lines, we're going to be relocating the electric lines along Chestnut Street, along the frontage of the development, serving services to the development as well as the residential complex to the other side of Chestnut Street. So we will put infrastructure service where we're allowed to underground to service those two parcels. There's a request for us to look at signage. We'll be replacing the solar warning curve sign on South Street and installing a hardwired alternative as part of those infrastructure improvements. There's a public transportation and accessibility request with the school bus stop. We'll establish a school bus stop at Chestnut Street near the entrance of the development. We'll work with the town to develop the location and the parameters on how you'd like us to construct that. Possibly putting a communal, looks like a mailbox area for convenience as well. Additional features, there will be an easement that will be conveyed, 10-foot wide easement to the town, allowing for public mixed-use trail within the upland, but alongside the wetlands, providing connectivity to 333 South Street and Route 20. So we'll work with the town in coming up with a plan on how that alignment works and how you'd like us to construct that. There's a stone wall preservation, retaining and incorporating the existing stone walls. Work with the town in coming up with how you'd like us to restore that and incorporate that into the design of the project. Traffic and safety enhancements, South Street Route 20 intersection. We will provide short-term improvements such as striping and timing adjustments to address and incorporate any traffic implications for the flow of traffic that we're introducing. Other developer contributions, $50,000 fiscal impact fee. I believe it's at C of O. Will provide that to the town to invest in existing parks and infrastructure, recreation administration programs. So there are some other items, mutual promises in the agreement that we've reviewed in consideration for the town's approval for the LIP improvement, and then the Chapter 40B approval process with ZBA, and we will work with the town to come up with a plan for these improvements as part of the approval process. There's some other language in the agreement that speaks to the terms of the sewer connection fees. And I think that captures most of it, but if you'd like, I can walk you through. I mean, it's a similar presentation to what we've done. The two larger buildings, as you can see, coming in off of Chestnut Street here are the 2.5-story buildings, and then, as I mentioned earlier, these 6 buildings are 2-story, 16-unit, with units, walk-up units on the top floors, and then units on the bottom floors. So I think we've done a little bit of a development on the renderings, a little bit, kind of show you the pool area, what we're considering, kind of, oops, not sure what happened there. And that would be on the northern of the larger two buildings here. There's a parking, I think we've gone through this previously. We've proposed 1.5 spaces per apartment unit. There's the pool, there's a dog park, courtyard, and some of the other amenities that will be constructed as part of the development that we reviewed with you previously. So as far as schedule, I'm not sure what happened to my let's see here. So these are the terms of the agreement in Exhibit D that I believe the town's had a chance to review. If you have any questions, I'd be able to answer those. And here's just a basic timeline. If we're able to get the requirements, the agreements, and the approvals from the town, we'd be looking to close on the land in 2025 and begin construction, hopefully, optimistically, in 2025 with first units in 2026. It's a 22-month project, so we'd be looking to wrap up by 2027. And we're in the process of putting together our LIP application with support of the town. We'd be looking to get that submitted within the next 30 to 45 days. Are there any questions on the items of work, the improvements that we've been reviewing with the town.
I actually have just a quick question on timing, and I don't know if this is applicable or not. If the improvements, for whatever reason, there's a lag because of Route 20 project, like sidewalk installation, it may not impact it at all. But if there's a lag between maybe the actual construction of this site and some of the improvements on this list, how would those be funded? Or is there no risk at all with any of these? We talked earlier, I think in September, about the possibility if some of the improvements couldn't be done because it just wasn't possible due to Route 20. How would that be funded? Would it be in trust? Would it be, like, what would a mechanism be to preserve that improvement after 2027, say, if there's a lag like that? Or maybe there's not a timing lag, but just in terms of thinking that through, if there's not an alignment of when some of these improvements can be done with the construction schedule, how would those be funded?
We could set aside the funds and come up with an engineer's estimate to complete that scope of work, that we could set in whatever the appropriate, method might be, whether it's in an escrow account, something along those lines. It happens commonly where, we sometimes at the end of the project, would end up writing a check for the dollars for those improvements, or we could put it into a fund, or whatever the town feels is appropriate. There's multiple options, I think, for us.
Okay. And just while we're talking about the agreement itself, the project fee schedule, what would that look like, or based on history, and that
Yep.
can even be, Kevin, to you, what's the thought behind that?
Sure. So the project fee schedule is, the fees are already set and established through the rules and regulations of the water and sewer, or of the sewer commissioners, and our water connection fees are established in our water regulations. So those numbers are known. We are in the process of taking the unit mix, the criterion as proposed, and doing the spreadsheet on it.
Okay.
Preliminary estimate that I have for that is about $1.9 million in water and sewer connection fees.
Okay.
And we will have water and sewer connection fees are based on the bedrooms, and there's a variety of studios, 1 bedrooms, 2 bedrooms, and 3 bedroom units being proposed here, so it's being worked through in our cost estimating right now, and then it will be inserted into the agreement as Exhibit C. But the base numbers are already known, and this will just codify it for the agreement.
That's Exhibit C to the agreement. I think that's what I'm process of finalizing.
Any other questions on either Exhibit D or anything else that's been presented, the agreement in front of us? Anything?
I have a few
Michelle, go ahead.
questions. Regarding and I don't know if this is would be a question for you, or if it's something that would happen after the LIP, or how it is facilitated, but local preference for affordable units. Who determines that, and how is that facilitated?
So it is codified in Exhibit D.
Okay.
That we will work with the developer to provide for local preference, but the local preference process itself is established in state regulation. And we just need to identify that in the LIP application, which will be done, and then the state will work with us for those eligibility requirements when the lottery is done with the.
Okay, so that is our intention, to move forward with local preference. Okay, I have another question.
Sure, go ahead.
if it's Okay, I really like the infrastructure improvements, the light sightline improvements, and the sidewalk connections. And I just am curious with the parcel of land that is going to be granted to the town for the development of future trails. Am I understanding that portion has not been identified yet? So that's something that's going to happen in the process. Will the Trails Committee, members of the Trails Committee, be included in that discussion, like, site visits and things like that, to ensure that it's appropriate? And then on that same vein, will their potential trails have connectivity to the sidewalks being developed, to Route 20, the road work that's being planned on Route 20, and will there be on the site will there be parking for, members of the community who want to access those trails?
I think yes to all those except for the last one.
Okay,
So it will connect into the sidewalks at Route 20, and the goal with the trail is to extend it up to 333 South Street. I know Criterion has interest in developing trails on their site for their residents as well, but our goal with this is to, begin cross lot or cross parcel connections up to 333 South Street where there's more robust sidewalk infrastructure and things like that. So the goal will get to have the 10-foot wide easement from Route 20 up to 333 South Street. Yes, if we were to construct a trail immediately, it'd have to terminate at that point, but this would give us an opportunity to then work with UMass and the other properties over there to continue the trail section in this area of town.
okay. All right, thank you.
Any other questions, comments?
I don't know how you
Teresa.
want this to go from a process perspective. I don't have any, I have questions for Mr. Mizikar, so I don't know if you want to close this part out or we're going to just do it collectively and.
Collectively is fine.
Okay.
Go ahead.
When we discussed authorizing you to negotiate a LIP, Mr. Mizikar, I, talked a lot about my concerns about development in this area. And I understand a LIP it's an advantage. There are improvements that we negotiate as part of this process that we would not otherwise get, but I need you to help sell me on this a little bit because I look at this and a lot of it I feel like is to the benefit of the development or the people in the development, perhaps with the exception of the public trails or maybe what we decide to do with investments in park infrastructure. But I would love to hear your perspective around why you, when you were authorized to negotiate this, why you landed here and what you think the advantages to the broader community are.
Yeah, so the roadway and sidewalk infrastructure improvements, I understand your comment that it benefits the development directly, but I think it also provides for a broader community development, especially as we see continued interest in the redevelopment of 333 South Street. Providing for this public sidewalks and roadway improvements along the frontage of this property, when it's included on both South Street and Chestnut Street, allows us to ensure that there's no gap in public infrastructure in the future. We wouldn't have to take land. We would make sure that the development of this site provides for that space and actual construction of it and doesn't actually preclude any of that work from happening in the future. So I do think there's truly a public benefit. Also integrating with the undergrounding of the electric utility, which is, a resiliency matter that we are approaching in all new developments within the town, is a benefit. There is other traffic safety improvements directly at South Street and at the intersection of Route 20 that are not included in the work that in the Route 20 corridor that this project will provide for broader public benefit. I think it's also just important to juxtapose Criterion's willingness to make these investments in the public infrastructure, although they may be surrounding their site, in comparison to an unfriendly 40B, where, we're, I'll call it, dealing with developers in other parts of town that are just a hard no on any of this, like not willing to even install, any aspect of public improvements if it doesn't have a direct insight benefit to their development. So finding partnerships, having experience with them, and then finding these, I think there was 8 or 9 different areas that they are willing to invest in. When honestly, there's no obligation for them to do that is why I think this is a prudent agreement to move forward with. So that's how I look at these public infrastructure investments.
Thank you.
Any other questions or comments?
I mean, just to kind of comment on what you just said, I think your question was a really good one, right? Because we hear so often that, there's the development is comes at a very fast pace. So to be able to try to find that middle ground where we are getting something that we wouldn't otherwise be able to afford to do in terms of the sidewalks or the improvement to Chestnut Street sightlines, that is something that's a benefit even if there weren't going to be apartments there. And then I do note that there will be 49, I think it is, affordable units, which is something that's needed in the community. I think we have very little levers that we can pull when a developer comes to us with a 40B project. So, you know, my preference is always to be able to have it be a friendly 40B where we can get some sort of benefit out of it as well. You know, it's a trade-off, understanding that the development is happening regardless.
And along the affordability lines, and since this is a rental development, you know, the 196 units will count towards our affordable housing inventory. And that level of construction would place us into a 2-year safe harbor, where we would not be subject to unfriendly 40Bs during 2 years from the permitting of this development.
And right now, we're at 6.17%, if I remember the number is. So until we get to 10%, the safe harbor
Correct.
is really the viable approach.
That is correct.
Okay.
'Cause until that point, unless we're an interim safe harbor, which this project would provide for, we are exposed to any 40B that comes forth.
Go ahead.
I was going to say, I mean, I think that's, you know, I struggle with this one because, you know, again, it's really concerned about the amount of development in that area where we haven't had a chance to sort of fully experience the impact before another one goes in. But I did look at it in a number of different contexts. Is it 198 units or 130, 90, 198?
196.
196, sorry. So, we know that more could go on that parcel, and I do recognize that we intentionally included this parcel in the proposed MBTA overlay district, which would allow 291 units by right. So I do look at this as like, I get the advantages of, you know, I don't want development. We say no. It doesn't stop the development. It just, you know, takes away some of these improvements that the developer is willing to offer. So, I mean, it's this push-pull, if you will. But I do think it's important, and it's frustrating to say it. You know, it's out of our control to say no. But you add on that it's less than what could be there. We get some of these improvements, and we achieve that 2-year safe harbor where we can say no and continuing to work toward meeting that 10% threshold that would give us that control that we need. So I think that it's helpful to understand the perspective around these improvements. I understand there are restrictions around, like, we can't, you know, ask them to make investments that aren't somewhat related to the development project itself. So I know that it has to be, you know, somewhat related. Long-winded way of saying, I appreciate the fact that we're getting some advantage, but it comes at the expense of something that, quite honestly, if I had the choice, I would vote no on. But I think it's important to note that that is not what we are in the power to vote on.
It's well said. It's not our land, right? I mean, that's the crux of it, right? Like, when you see development come into the community, I think it's really important to understand that this is a piece of property that was sold in a private agreement, and the person who bought the land wants to do this, and here we are, right? So what's in our control, as you said? What's in our control is making sure that along with 196 units come some sort of benefit that we can say, you know, we wouldn't have been able to do this without this. It's like, you know, it's not the greatest of consolation prizes. I think that this is, I mean, it's hard for you to sit here and have to listen to this, so sorry.
that's all right.
Because I know that you are negotiating with us in really good faith, and I, you know, having sat down with Jack, you know, over time, I think I met with him once before, you know, and then again, you know, in the public meeting, you know, he clearly wants to be a part of the community, and I think we have plenty of examples in our community where a developer has become, you know, very much ingrained in the community and done wonderful things for the community. I think of, you know, Lakeway Commons as an example of a developer who wasn't just here to turn a profit, but was here to really become part of the community. And so I do recognize that as well. So, you know, I am very much appreciative of the willingness to partner with us, to take care of some of the things that we see as important for that area if there is going to be development. And hopefully that does make it a little bit more manageable for residents who live in that area when, you know, 196 units are online.
I appreciate that. I mean, that we do approach development that way. We do see it as a partnership with the communities that we're looking to develop and enter. And we've had some success in Shrewsbury previously in the past, and you know, we're sensitive to a lot of the struggles that the towns and municipalities go through. So it is a balancing act to try to figure out how to make this work, and you know, in a way that satisfies everyone, all the interests as best as we can. So you know, part of it on this one is it's a, you know, more of a kind of a softer approach to 196 units. You know, traditionally there was a period of time where you would see, you know, 4 stories of apartments, you know, and try to maximize the amount of units you could get on a parcel, and there's been a really big pushback against that, and we're sensitive to that because it is part of the tenant experience as members of the community, that they don't want to just be in this massive, you know, dense living environment just to not feel like they're really tied into the community. Like the access to the trail, I think, will allow that, and it, you know, we've been successful with that approach, listening to the community's interests as well as ours, and finding a balance that works. So we recognize the challenges that everyone has, including, you know, you guys here. So we appreciate your support.
Anything else? If not, thank you for answering the question.
Sorry.
Carlos.
Thank you. Just quick comments, because I share the concerns of my colleagues, but I think, you know, one thing I think for our board to look forward to, if that's the right words, if those are the right words, is that 2-year safe harbor period for us to continue to strategize on our housing production plan and make sure that we're incrementally getting towards the 10% goal. I do have a small ask, and I don't know who it's for, but you know, as we continue to talk about trails and creating that connectivity, not just for the residents there, but for the surrounding neighborhood, I would like to see if it's possible if we could also perhaps make a trail or connection with the Shrewsbury Commons that are abutting this development. I know that there's a lot of walkers there, and I feel like they're almost, I don't want to say trapped, but in between Route 20 and Route 9, it can be tough to just walk around. So that would be my ask.
We can,
Yeah, we'd be open to.
that's to the east, as you know, so
Yep.
that's the portion of the property that the trail will likely be on, right, to the east of where the
Yeah.
buildings are being developed, so we'll do our best to integrate that suggestion into it,
Thank you.
into the conversation with Criterion.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, good. What's the pleasure of the board?
I move the board approve signing the development agreement and letter for support of the local initiative program application by CPC Land Acquisition Company LLP for 409 South Street.
Second.
Have been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Those opposed? Motion carries unanimously. Thank you for coming in this evening.
Thank you, everyone, for your time this evening.
Thank you, Eric.
Thank you.
Next item on the agenda, under new business, to review and act on the 2025 license renewals to include the following license types: alcohol, common victular, entertainment, Sunday and weekday, bowling alleys, billiard tables, automatic amusements, auto dealers, livery, auctioneer, Lord's Day, seasonal dancing, and donation bins. And there's an attached list, but I believe there's a qualification to that list. So, Mr. Mizikar or Mr. Dobson?
I think Justin has it updated now, or do you?
Okay.
Yeah, so, thank you, board members. Mr. Shimmy is correct. There's a list of licensees attached to the agenda that are recommended for renewal. There are several that we are recommending that the board wait to vote on until your meeting next Tuesday. So I'm just gonna pull up that list now.
I have the list in the motion. Is there more discussion, or do you want me to just?
No,
make
I
the
ha-
motion?
Yeah, if you
Can
would
you
want
just
to make.
clarify, Mr. Dobson, why you recommend waiting? What is outstanding on these?
Yeah, so they've met all of the application criteria. However, they have unpaid personal property tax bills that we are working with the business owners to address. So that's why we are waiting or requesting that the board wait to vote on the renewal of these licenses.
Yeah, motion, please.
So I move the board approve the license renewal applications as listed on the agenda, excluding Foley Motorsports, Gray Car Auto Center and Repair, Half Moon Tavern, Hebert Retail, I Craze Frozen Yogurt, Mercedes-Benz of Shrewsbury, Metro West Motorcars, Osaka, Price Chopper Supermarkets, Select Trucks of New England, Starbucks Corporation, Sunoco, Tavern in the Square, Ty and I.
Second.
Have been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously.
I
Next,
could make a joke about how I hope this gets resolved, because I don't know where I'll go, considering these places that I frequent.
next item on the agenda is to review and act on the application of Rami Chamoun of St. Mary's Syriac Orthodox Church, 1 Industrial Drive, for a one-day all-alcohol license for a New Year's Eve party from 8 p.m. to 1 a.m. Starting on December 31st, 2024, and ending on January 1st, 2025. And all the documents have been provided.
Correct.
Okay. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Have been moved and seconded, and all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is to review and act on the recommendation from Shrewsbury Electric and Cable Operations relative to the request of Habib Parvin-Nejad for a streetlight in the vicinity of 43 Gold Street. This request appeared before us at our meeting on November 12th. We voted to send to Selco. Selco's recommendation is to add an LED light to an existing utility pole, number 9, directly across from the requester's home, and the annual cost of the light, which we'll see in future budgets, is $54.42. Is there a motion?
Move approval.
Second.
Have been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is to review and act on the streetlight request of Eileen Thurber, 22 Glen Jerry Road, for a streetlight in the vicinity of Bowden Street and Keys House Road intersection.
Move approval.
Second.
Have been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
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 Motion carries unanimously. If we could send this over to Selco, please. Thank you. Next item is an annual, this is 18 years, or at least 18 years now, review and act on the matter of one free bag pay-as-you-throw program for Monday, December 30th, 2024 to Saturday, January 4th, 2025, due to the holiday and the kick-out of one day on trash. The estimated maximum revenue loss is $24,750 based on 11,000 households using one free bag.
Move approval.
Second.
Have been moved and seconded, and all those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item on the agenda is to review and act on the revised American Rescue Plan Act expenditure plan. This item requests our vote to approve an updated ARPA expenditure plan. We voted to approve the current iteration of this plan at our meeting on October 8th. At that time, it was recommended that we continue to monitor expenditures and projects to ensure that all funds are obligated by December 31st, 2024. As we know, if they're not encumbered by that time, we would lose them. Those encumbered have to be expended by still 12/31/26, correct, under the Treasury guidelines, so that no funds are returned to the government. We have the expenditure plan in front of us, reallocating a total of $80,940. Do I have the latest version of that? Okay. And that's the current unencumbered balance. So, and it would be reallocated, all of the different items, and would be reallocated for the Ray Post Stone renovations, correct?
Greystone Post, correct.
Yep. Any further details? We have the details in front of us, or do you want to?
The only thing I'll add is we'll be back again next week with, any further cleanup that,
Okay.
making sure that we're scrubbing this nearly on a daily basis, and again, in order to send none of the $11.6 million back. So we're down to really small numbers, and we're in a good spot.
Okay, so for the safety net, we covered most of that, so the last month or two?
Correct.
Great,
Yep.
that's great. Any questions or comments?
I was just really glad to see that the resident assistance program had gotten down to 5,000. Like, would we put $100,000 in there?
I think so.
And early on, it hadn't been first couple of
Right,
months.
and then all of a
Keep it off.
sudden, I mean, I know, Ms. Martinez, that you were the one kind of keeping track of all that.
There were quite a few that came in right at the deadline.
Yeah, that's wonderful, because I think it's really, people in the community needed it, and there was a way for local government to really reach out and provide that helping hand, and that's really fantastic.
That's what it was for, and I'm glad it was utilized for that.
That's wonderful.
Okay. Any questions or comments? If not, entertain a motion.
Move the board approve the updated ARPA expenditure plan as presented.
Second.
Have been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. Thank you. Next item, under item 14 is Town Manager Goal Update. As you know, we had originally scheduled this for November. We had a lot on the agenda, and we ended up pushing this out to December so we could spend more time on it. Mr. Mizikar.
So, Mr. Dobson's going to pull up just a short PowerPoint presentation. Just want to take a couple minutes and remind everyone that, throughout the course of this year, we changed from a year-long goal-setting process to much shorter cycles in order to bring, I think, a higher level of transparency and show how tangible the work is that we're doing in the office and specifically what I'm working on. So we set the first segment, the first 12-week cycle ran from July 16th to October 8th. And then we have set this next cycle to start on November 1, and I'm happy to get everyone up to speed. But because of, the lengthiness of agendas and other work that has been going on, we didn't, get here right at the outset, but this will continue through January 25th. Justin, so you just go ahead. Actually, one more slide, if you don't mind. Yep, no problem at all. So, just a quick reminder, I said 5 general areas of focus for the fiscal year. They align largely with the strategic plan and then sub-strategies within each strategic outcome area. Go ahead, Justin. And one more. So for the first 12-week cycle, there was 3 core objectives: focus on organizational culture, trust and community engagement and communication, and organization development and planning. Go ahead, Justin. So I'll provide an update on these 3 areas. So within organizational culture, we established an internal staff newsletter to provide better communications, not only of the work directly from the office of the town manager, but to connect everything in with the vision, values, and strategies associated with the strategic plan, to highlight the accomplishments of town staff, and to broaden information that all employees will benefit as they're performing their duties in serving residents. So I think that's been very successful. We've sent out a newsletter the final Wednesday of every month in sharing that information. An area that I didn't actually get to within the first 12 weeks that needs to be carried forward into the future is additional work on the values associated with our strategic plan. This will include engaging with staff at all levels, reconsidering those values, and trying to make values a more important part of our work culture. When we began the strategic plan, we dove right in on the strategies and the tangible work and setting goals of all employees. And we kind of skipped over the culture aspect of it, but that will be revisited later in the course of this fiscal year. So Justin, if you can go ahead. Within the second area, trust and community engagement and communications, a couple things to touch on. I started town manager office hours. They are the fourth Tuesday of every month before your second meeting of the month, and they will continue indefinitely into the future as long as residents continue to find value and engage throughout that process, which they have. And we established the Common Ground Roundtables series for direct community interaction with residents and groups. We've held 2 Common Ground Roundtable sessions, and we look to continue that regularly throughout calendar year 25 and beyond. And then we've also reintroduced some things into the select board schedule to provide greater audience to the work of staff, highlighting departments through regular department updates. And Mr. Snowden and his team will be doing quarterly financial updates, with the next one coming in January, and providing an update of where we stand financially. So if you can move on, Justin. And then the next area, organizational development and planning. We are on track for delivery within the next week or so of a comprehensive 3-year staffing plan that will integrate into our preliminary budget development and conversations with town staff. It's a rather comprehensive document. We provided some highlights to the board at a workshop in the late summer, and have been working on it week in and week out, and we'll have a polished document to you within the next week or so. It was important that we filled the DPW director position, and that's been accomplished, and Mr. McInerney has definitely hit the ground running and provided a lot of support to the DPW team and some fresh perspective on things, which we greatly appreciate. With regards to formal strategies, I'm really excited about the work that the Shrewsbury Development Corporation has started on. They, of course, had their kickoff meeting in late October, early November. Ms. Cassavant and Ms. Flynn attended that to support that kickoff. At that meeting, the group hit the ground running and identified the need for an economic development strategy. We met again last night and coalesced around a scope of work and what will be important to ask consultants to support us on. Funding sources have been identified to provide for that work, and we look to get responses back from consultants and get the SDC's approval before the end of January. We continue to work through housing strategies with the board. We spent time speaking about 409 South Street and developing this agreement, and then the broader context of the affordable housing inventory, maintaining, being able to achieve safe harbor through a housing production plan, and of course, developing a strategy to get to those various safe harbor periods with the developments that we know that are occurring in the community. Still a lot more work that's needed in conjunction with the Affordable Housing Trust, and I'm also proud of all the work that they're doing and how they're going about their work and taking their next steps forward. So if I look ahead to this segment, there's a lot of work that needs to balance out the goals in this particular period of time. A lot of this time is spent on the essential functions of the position, including setting strategy associated with the budget, fiscal year 26 priorities. We, of course, have worked our way through the special town meeting and have spent a lot of time recently on the referendum process and citizens interested in exercising that ability. So a lot of essential functions happen each and every year as we work towards that next cycle, towards the annual town meeting. But along with that, The two core objectives that we'll be focused on from November 1st to January 25th includes that support for the economic development strategy, getting through procurement and consultant selection, and developing the scope of work, which again, we're about 3/4 of the way through and received great feedback from the Development Corporation last night. And then our longer-term infrastructure analysis and planning, which again will dovetail nicely into the FY26 budget process. The Department of Public Works, we've met to lay out a process to do an updated water and sewer capacity analysis. And from there, especially on the sewer side, we'll be engaging with the Westboro Treatment Plant Board regarding the capacity that remains there, along with the town of Westboro, and finding a path forward for a multi-year infrastructure enhancement and hopefully expansion plan to continue to be able to satisfy the needs and provide for sanitary sewer for the town. So again, we look forward to working on these two core objectives and updating the board later on in January or early February with any outcomes or challenges that we've experienced and where we'll go from the 12 weeks after that. So I still appreciate this process. I do think it's just a change of mindset. If I look back on those first 12 weeks goals, they could have easily been the annual goals that we would have set. But having a greater area of focus on it in a shorter amount of time produced, even faster results. And I look forward to continuing with this process and happy to answer any questions you might have.
Any questions or comments?
I just have a comment.
Yeah, go ahead.
The staffing needs assessment is something that, I think is really critical to making sure that we have appropriate staffing in our departments to make sure that we can meet the needs of the community as it grows and as the needs change and what people expect changes. So I'm glad to see the focus there. And I think, obviously the salary and wage analysis is also goes hand in hand with that, right? Because we want to not only attract talented staff, we want to be able to retain talented staff. I think we took a step towards that, when town meeting voted to update the personnel bylaw for the family medical leave. That, just shows trying to be current, trying to make sure that we're attractive, because we are competing with the private sector for workforce. And then also the sewer capacity is just something that's on my mind. I think I was just reading in the Community Advocate over the weekend, right, Westboro, talking about a project that they were bringing online and just being really, really accurate, like very precise in how much sewer capacity they were using and how much sewer capacity was left. And nothing is going to slow growth, commercial growth faster than not having the sewer capacity that we need. And we're getting to the point now where we're seeing, finally the scales are tipping where we're getting that commercial, outpacing the residential as far as our, tax rate go, or, tax allocation goes. And I wouldn't want sewer capacity to be the thing that stops us. So I'm really interested in making some headway on that and getting that resolved.
Thank you. Any other questions or comments? Okay. One thing that you said, and it's important to keep in mind, the special town meeting, the amount of time that was spent preparing for that over the course of several months, the budget, when we get the revenue manual presented to us. Again, it's an ongoing process where it starts much earlier than now. So the blocking and tackling not only gets done, but continues to get done well. But appreciate these initiatives, as well as some of the carry forward from segment 1 and then some of the segment 1 moving to segment 3. So look forward to hearing on the continued progress of these particular segments. It allows for you to focus on those areas for that particular set of time and then carry that forward to the extent other segments can't get done or pushed forward, so it allows you to get more granular. So appreciate that and look forward to hearing on your continued progress. So great. If there's nothing else, we'll move on.
Sorry.
Oh, Carlos, go ahead, sorry.
Looking the other way. Thank you, Mr. Chair. Mr. Mizikar, appreciate your presentation and appreciate your update on your first 12 weeks. I know this goes back to lessons learned from professional development, so really great to see you putting that into action. And I think one of the pieces that I really have enjoyed hearing from you is the engagement that you've been having with the community, with Common Ground and with your regular office hours. So certainly look forward to the community taking you up on your offer and talking with you, and also engaging with us as we move forward. I think you mentioned housing and the Affordable Housing Trust. I will also elevate that the trust is really eager to work with the town and work with partners out there in the community to create or refurbish or rehab housing to make sure that it's affordable for folks in our community. So, really look forward to the progress there. I know there's a lot of work to do. And then I think just one of my last comment is I really appreciate the regular department updates. It reminds me of my time on the finance committee when we had, for a time, some regular workshops with different department heads. And I think it's just really a great educational opportunity, not just for us, but for residents at home to learn more about what goes on in the town hall. So really thank you for all of that work, and look forward to the next 12 weeks.
Great. Yeah, it is a good opportunity to hear about the good things that are happening other than as part of the FinCom budget hearing process, which is a lot about FTEs and what we spend our money on, but doesn't get to the day-to-day or strategy or thoughts behind it and the progress that's been made in that level. And it's done quickly. I mean, we've had probably 15-minute presentations that really drill down into high interest areas or high points that they'd like to reflect upon, but it also gives a fair representation of the outstanding progress that they're making. So just another touch point to understand what the great things are going on in our community. If there's nothing else, good with that. So we'll go to the next item, is to review and act on winter maintenance of unaccepted subdivision streets to be plowed by developers pursuant to Select Board Policy 16. Each year, our office sends letters by certified mail to contact developers of unaccepted subdivisions pursuant to our Policy 16. There are 3 current unaccepted divisions included in our materials. Mr. Repetka has prepared a memorandum detailing the calculation of reimbursement. Rates should the town need to perform required winter maintenance operations, and the cost for de-icing is $1,358, and the cost for plowing is $605.80 per event. Any questions or comments? Go ahead.
Just had a quick question about this. What is the reason why these subdivision streets have not been accepted?
The baseline reason we do this is normally subdivisions that are under construction.
Okay.
Like, that's the historical policy basis for this. Provides us an opportunity to ensure the residents know and understand who's responsible for their streets, at the outset, so they're not, if the street doesn't get plowed, they're not disappointed in the town as they move into their brand new home. So it provides that awareness. Unfortunately, some developers have lagged in actually getting their streets accepted. So the policy has been there for those residents just to ensure that their street is maintained when the town has no ability to maintain it. So,
I was curious about that. Specifically, there is one of the developments that's been partially developed for many years. And I was curious why that hadn't been accepted, but I know it is not a complete development.
It's up to the landowner to petition the town, and then we'll go out and inspect it to make sure it meets current standards, and any deficiencies are corrected before we would take it over as a public way.
Thank you.
Anything else? If not, is there a motion?
I move the board approve the winter maintenance of unaccepted subdivision streets to be plowed by developers pursuant to Select Board Policy 16.
Second.
I've been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. The next item on the agenda is to review An act on the select board meeting schedule for January to June 2025. Covers our meetings from Tuesday, January 14th, 2025 through Tuesday, June 24th, 2025. Any questions or comments? Not, is there a motion?
Move approval or move adoption of the meeting schedule.
Second.
I've been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Motion carries unanimously. We're into correspondence. Email dated November 18th, 2024 from Jack Luffel Associates, Saxon Partners, regarding the Wheelock Comprehensive Permit Site Approval Application, so noted. Next item is an email dated November 20th, 2024 from State Representative Hannah Kane regarding Economic Development Bond Bill, so noted. Next item is a letter dated November 26, 2024 from Gregory Gatzio-Ganis, Executive Director of the Shrewsbury Contributory Retirement System regarding Retirement Board elected position. So noted. Next item, letter dated November 26, 2024 from Kerry Bogdan, Risk Analysis Branch Chief, Federal Emergency Management Agency regarding flood insurance study report and flood insurance rate map. So noted. Next item is email dated November 27, 2024 from Fire Chief Seth Colby regarding resolution from the City of Salem. And this is worth noting in a little more detail, that on October 26th, the Salem Fire Department was alerted to a 172-acre fire, and then there was a second fire, and they wanted to know the members of various fire departments that had responded and assisted with that, including our own Shrewsbury Fire Department. And the City Council on November 14th had taken a resolution recognizing all of the great work by the surrounding fire departments that had assisted with that. So we just wanted to call that out and just the brotherhood of fire departments, in addition to public safety, but just the help that they provided. And I just wanted to recognize that and appreciate the chief for sending that along to us, so noted. Next item is an email dated December 4th, 2024 from Benny Wong on behalf of Mass Development regarding TEFRA hearing notice, UMass Memorial, multiple locations, December 10th, 2024, so noted. Next item is a letter dated December 5th, 2024 from Sharon Thomas, Town Clerk, regarding Town of Shrewsbury General Bylaws, Article 1, Section 3, certifying the annual street listing of residents by precinct, so noted. And then item 24, which is a memorandum dated December 5th, 2024 from Sharon Thomas, Town Clerk, regarding certification of referendum signatures pursuant to Section 16 of Chapter 553 of the Acts of 1953. So a referendum petition under Section 16 was received by the Office of the Town Clerk on December 2nd, 2024. The received petition included originally 1,843 signatures. 1,706 signatures were certified, which is in excess of the 5% of registered voters requirement of 1,349. As such, the petition has been certified by the Town Clerk as a valid request. Regarding warrant article number 9 and the action taken. So the next step, at least that I understand, under Section 553 is that after the expiration of 7 days of certification, which has not happened yet, which would be our next meeting, the action would be taken by us to set a date. So that's, the next step would be at our next meeting to have a conversation about when that date would be, right?
Correct.
Anything more on that? I think we'll have a more fulsome conversation at that time.
I would just say that, I intend to be able to provide the board with detailed information of logistical and legal considerations for you as you set that date. And if the board feels that it would be appropriate, staff could recommend a few dates for your consideration to help further the conversation at your meeting. But there are many things to balance as far as when you may be able to set that date for.
Together with the mechanics of availability of voting
those
locations
things.
and all of that.
Poll workers and all those things.
Okay. So certified 5th. Yeah, so next meeting makes sense.
On the
It's an
17th.
agenda item.
Yep.
Okay, so we're meeting a week from now. All right, any other questions or comments? All right. Next item is under ZBA decisions, ZBA decision of November 20th, 2024. Well, there are two ZBA decisions, both dated November 2024, and they are both so noted. If there are no other items for discussion, I'll entertain a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
Second.
Have been moved and seconded. All those in favor, please signify by saying aye.
Aye.
We are adjourned. Thank you for joining us. We will see you on the 17th. Thank you.